The first beer humans ever drank on purpose wasn't served at a party. It was poured over a grave, 9,000 years ago, in a village that predates the wheel, the pyramids, and writing itself. Someone brewed alcohol for a reason we almost never talk about. Not to celebrate, to grieve. In 2021, archaeologists digging in southern China uncovered something strange at a site called Qiaotou, a raised earthen platform surrounded by a hand-dug ditch holding the remains of two people and dozens of painted clay pots. These weren't ordinary pots. They were some of the oldest painted pottery ever found on Earth. And when scientists tested the residue inside, they found something nobody expected from a 9,000-year-old burial site: beer. Not the beer you're picturing. This was a fermented mix of rice, a wild grain called Job's tears, and roots dug straight from the ground. Researchers even found traces of mold used to kickstart the fermentation, the earliest known use of that technique anywhere in the world, predating written records by 8,000 years. In other words, before humans could write a single word, they had already reverse-engineered fermentation well enough to brew on purpose. Which raises an obvious question. Why go through all that effort for a funeral? Here's the detail almost no one mentions when they talk about the history of alcohol. The pottery at Qiaotou wasn't found near any homes. There was no village kitchen, no everyday living space nearby. It was found only near the dead, which tells archaeologists this beer wasn't for daily drinking. It was reserved, deliberately, for ritual. The living gathered, drank together, and used that shared intoxication to mark the passing of one of their own. And researchers believed that ritual, that shared drinking, did something bigger than honor the dead. It built trust between people who weren't related. It gave separate families a reason to cooperate. And according to the researchers who published the discovery, that same social glue may have helped pave the way for complex farming societies that emerged 4,000 years later. And Qiaotou wasn't alone. Nearly 2,000 years earlier, on the other side of the continent, hunter-gatherers were doing something remarkably similar at a site in Turkey called Göbekli Tepe. This site has no houses, no farms, just massive carved stone pillars. Some of the oldest monumental architecture ever built by humans, constructed before agriculture even existed. Archaeologists found huge stone vats there too, some large enough to hold over 150 liters, coated in residue that suggests they were used to brew beer from wild grain no one had domesticated yet, which means groups of hunter-gatherers who had no permanent homes were traveling long distances, gathering and getting people drunk together, specifically to organize the labor needed to build something enormous. The beer wasn't the reward for the work. Some archaeologists now argue the beer is what made the work possible in the first place, which leads to a theory that flips the standard story of civilization on its head. For decades, the assumption was simple. Humans discovered farming, started growing grain for bread, and alcohol came later, almost by accident. But some researchers now argue it may have happened in the opposite order, that the desire for fermented, mind-altering drink may have come first, and the decision to start cultivating grain on purpose may have been driven partly by the desire to keep the beer coming. If that's true, the drive to get intoxicated together isn't a side effect of civilization. It might be one of the reasons civilization started at all. So why isn't this the version of history we usually hear? Because it's uncomfortable. It's easier to imagine our ancestors as noble, hard-working farmers than as a species that organized its first mega-projects around drinking together. But the pottery, the vats, and the burial sites don't lie. Long before anyone could write down what they were doing, humans were already using intoxication as a tool to grieve, to bond, to build. So the next time someone raises a glass at a funeral, a wedding, or a celebration, remember what that gesture actually is. It's not a modern habit. It's a 9,000-year-old instinct, inherited from people who understood something we're only now proving with science. That shared drink was never really about the drink. It was about the people standing next to you when you drank it.